Welcome, beautiful friends, to the Way of Mastery. We are wrapping up lesson number 7 tonight, Birthing the Mind of Christ. How's been birthing the mind of Christ going for you guys? You know, last week we talked about the symbol that he uses in this lesson of how our perceptive world, our ego, what we think we are in our thinking mind, is this imperceptible shadow on an imperceptible rock, on a tiny rock where nobody's paying any attention. And when I had tuned in with him, he asked us all to really take this parable or this symbol into our beings until it was utterly laughable. I hope you guys found some humor in that. When I did that with him, he guided me to that picture of the earth taken from like Saturn, where earth was almost an imperceptibly blue dot. It kind of helps to put things in a wee bit of perspective. But we're going to pick up right where we left off. But before we get started, I'm always, and it just works out that I always kind of tend to see this stuff, but the truth is getting into mainstream media in the most obscure ways. I don't know if anybody pays attention. About the only thing I follow anymore is a little bit of science about space, but SpaceX, which is this private company, is putting rockets into space, and they launched one last week. And this is the story. SpaceX scores with California launch, heads towards reusable rockets. I'm going to dispense with it. I'm going to get to the third paragraph. This was written by Ashley Vance, and this is published in Bloomberg Weekly. And I want you to listen. I watched from about 5 miles away in an elevated, gravelly cutout while Rustic offered a spectacular view of the Vandenberg launch pads. For the first 15 seconds after liftoff, I stood with mouth agape and thought that matter is just energy condensed to a slow vibration and that we're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively and that there's no such thing as death and that life is only a dream that we are imagining of ourselves. And then it hit me. It's a thunderous crackling that comes with fire being tortured. She talks about the actual launch. And it didn't get edited out. I mean, there's a lady having a spiritual awakening watching a rocket launch. My point here is multifaceted. You never know when an opening is going to come. I didn't know when mine was going to come when it came. You never know. What if you just lived your life curiously expecting that it would come? And if so, I hope you get something published in Bloomberg Business Week. You know how many people read this and have no idea about spirituality, and Spirit drops this pebble into their consciousness. Wow. So thank you, Ashley Vance, for opening up to the truth and then actually having the courage to write it, and to her editors for not taking it out. Woohoo! Pretty amazing stuff. Okay, Cindy, you ready with the axioms, please?
I am created as my Father created me to be. I am free, and nothing sources my experience but me in each moment. Nothing has an effect on me whatsoever, save that which I choose to allow to affect me. I need do nothing. I do not live any ordinary moments. With each breath, my experiences are the stepping stones laid before me of God to guide me home. Therefore, I will bring awareness to each moment and allow it to teach me how to forgive, how to embrace, how to love, and therefore, how to live fully. The only relationship which holds any value at all is your relationship with God, your creative source. And the keys to the kingdom: desire, intention, allowance, and surrender. And the definition of love: love allows all things, accepts all things, trusts all things, embraces all things, and is therefore transcendent of all things.
Thank you, Cindy. Okay, number 1 tonight, I'm going to pull out I choose to allow, because that ties back down here into love allows all things. All of our suffering has been because we have not chosen to allow. And all suffering arises out of resistance because we choose not to allow. Most of the time, we're unconscious that it's even a choice. We immediately suffer. It's like that choice of resistance is somewhere in our unconscious mind, if you will, out of our conscious awareness, so we don't believe we have a choice. That's why we run around in our egoic consciousness thinking we're victims all the time. But we choose. Every experience that we are having, we choose it. You may not be conscious of the choice that's being made, but you can become aware because your experience will tell you what your choice was. So if you are suffering, you need to recognize, I chose to resist something instead of allow. If you're angry, you have to be really honest with yourself and say, I chose to be angry. No matter what the circumstances and situations was, I chose to be angry. I didn't allow what was happening to be. I chose to respond to it with resistance, which may be anger or whatever. So whatever it is you're experiencing, you just need to take 2 steps back and go, well, what would I had to have chosen in order to have this experience? Because, of course, number 3, and number 1, you're not living any moments that you're not creating. It's impossible for someone else to create. We'll go to this one down here, number 3, my experiences. Has anyone experienced anybody else's experiences? Ever. We like to live them vicariously. That's one of the reasons we go to the movies all the time. We get to live vicarious experiences all the time. But in truth, you can't experience anyone else's experiences. So if you're experiencing something, it's because of your choice. And if it's an experience you're not liking, it's probably because you have chosen not to allow. Love allows all things. That's why love is forever transcendent and knows not of suffering, knows not of fear, knows not of guilt, knows not of pain. So just look at your life. If you're willing to be really honest with yourself, whatever you're experiencing, you've chosen it. And if it's something you're not liking, it's because probably you've chosen not to allow what is to be. I don't know, some of you guys probably out there watch the news at night, and you go into a whole lot of not allowance. And it's just the news. I mean, is it really worth going into non-allowance because of something you see that may be happening on the other side of the world? Is it worth throwing your peace away? So just look at the times in which you're throwing your peace away and then look at your allowance. Number 2, I need do nothing. Need is what we'll talk about tonight. Explore your whole idea about need. If you just listen to your vocabulary for a week, at the times and situations in which you say the word need, and then you just take a step back and go, what would I have to believe about myself and about creation to perceive myself in need? Because we operate from this place of lack and scarcity so much that we think we need so much. And if you think you need so much, if you don't get what it is you think you need, where are you going to find yourself? Suffering. So just look at need. A lot of what you think you need, you don't need. I mean, I remember having a conversation with Jeshua one time about needing something. He's like, dude, I didn't have a convenience store when I walked the world. That need makes absolutely no sense to me. Is it a need because it's a need, or you have learned and been conditioned to believe that you need that? If it's a real need, then I would have needed it 2,000 years ago. Well, the point he was getting at is that we, in God, have no needs. So just explore your relationship with need and look at how your consciousness frames need, your relationship to it, and what that must suggest that you think about creation. Number 3, we'll talk about to guide me home. Our last dialogue that we did last Friday was about the doldrums. Yeah, where we kind of have recognized all of my doing is getting me nowhere. I just keep going in circles. I keep doing the Course in Miracle lessons over and over and over. I keep listening to these channelings over and over and over. And I keep thinking I need to do something. But what we don't recognize is we need do nothing. God's intention is to guide everyone home to remembrance. Are we listening for that guidance? Are we open to following? Or are we habitually thinking, oh, I don't ever hear guidance. I don't know what to... And we're just thinking. Because really what that is speaking in your mind, so you can't really ever hear guidance. So recognize, if you knew how to get home on your own, we would all be there already. It's not until you're willing to go, I don't know how, even with the Course in Miracles, even with the Way of Mastery. Let me use the power of my choice to allow God to guide me home. I need do nothing. And then number 4 tonight, your relationship with God. One of the most powerful forgiveness opportunities that I had was to forgive God. And when Jeshua said, you need to forgive me and the Father, I was like, what? Because of course I had created perceptions about Jeshua and about God. I had projected from my tiny shadow body mind a personality, traits onto God. And I had to forgive my creations of limiting concepts and beliefs and judgments and everything that I had put on God. I mean, right now, if we all were asked to define God and we wrote it down, if we actually managed to get anything on the paper and we compared them, it would be nothing alike. Funny thing is, God's one and we all know it as one, but we would all describe it differently. So consider forgiving your perceptions of God, because I can assure you they're not right. Let them go so that you might be open, that love might reveal itself to you on its terms, not limited by our perceptions. So that's one we usually don't get to, this idea of having to forgive God. Not that God's done anything, but we have to forgive and release, because remember, all forgiveness is for ourselves, what we've projected on God. Because if you go back and you investigate need very deeply, you'll recognize you've got a beef against God because your needs have never been met in the way that you wanted them to be met. So anyway, it's really deep if you're willing to consider your definitions, concepts, and everything else around God, and actually do some releasing work within yourself so that you can create an opening, a space, so that love can inform you, reveal itself to you. Keys to the kingdom? Well, clearly tonight our focus has been allowance. Allowance, allowance, allowance. And Jeshua tells us over and over, that's the most important key to the kingdom, is allowance. Because boy, that's the thing we don't do. If you watch the little gatekeeper in your mind, it's vigilant like crazy. It doesn't allow. It's standing guard, viciously sometimes, aggressively. It's not about allowance. And then love. Embrace. I talked about this a little bit last week. What if we chose to allow God to guide me home by teaching me how to embrace? And that's all an inner experience. And that's the only place you can learn. That's the only place you can be taught. That's a powerful meditation. Maybe give that a go. Okay, the Lord's Prayer. Again, tonight we're going to do JM's version, and we're going to do Jen Stackpole's version, who sung it here. So if you don't know this, just relax. If you want a translation of it, it's available on the One Who Wakes website, or you can pick up a sheet on the other side of the fireplace.
Awun, the Boshmaya, Ni te Kadash Shamar, Te te Malkuda, Neve Asivinach, Akina the Boshmaya O Baraha, Haulan Lachman, Sunkanan Yamana, Boshwoklan Halpin, Akina Dapanan, Shwakin Il Hayabin. Ula talan el nision, el pasan en bisha. But all the lachim el kuda, uhaila, Utish Bhakta. La Alam. Amin. Amen.
Abunde boshmaya Nita kedash shama Tete makuta Nwere savianek Kanada boshmaya of Barahar How long lachmadest you can in Yamana Wash Walkland Habain I Canada Fanan Schwachen El Hayabain Ula Talan Desiona e la person min bisha Metal de la kimakuta Uhaila Utishbokta La Alam Amen. Amen.
That is beautiful. Thank you, Jen, Yeshua, and JM. That Aramaic Lord's Prayer in Aramaic, it is a vibrational resonance in and of itself that can initiate healing and an alchemical transformation. I know some of you, for me, when I heard it the first time, it was just like this, the back got erect and I felt all that energy just, whew. I mean, that's the soul saying, yes, I know this, I know this. So last week we wrapped up with Yeshua saying, don't try and love God more. That's going to put a thorn in religion's side. Don't try and love your brother more. And don't waste any time and energy trying to convince anyone that you love them. I don't know, if you guys take that serious, you're going to have a lot of extra time on your hands. And he's going to start this one by telling us what you might do with that extra time. Cindy?
Put the whole of your attention on giving up the patterns of belief from which you have attempted to crucify the self that God made and placed within you as your very awareness of your existence. Learn to love that self beyond all created things. Learn to nurture that self. Learn to cultivate within that self only that which speaks of joy and truth, so that your words and your actions and your very presence always uplifts another, so that when another walks into the room in which you are sitting or standing or moving, they feel like a breath of fresh air just hit them, even if you haven't lifted a finger. As long as there is a trace of energy within you in which you are striving to get from any perceived thing or object around you what you are sure you lack inside yourself, you cannot know the love of self, and you cannot experience freedom. Happiness is indeed an inside job.
Wow. If we just got that last line, happiness is an inside job. If everyone really, truly knew, I don't mean conceptually, but knew that happiness is never but one choice away from any place you think you are. Wow. I mean, I don't know, but there are lots of industries on this planet that would just disappear because we would no longer seek happiness by changing our appearance or by changing the other people's perceptions about us by what we wear or what we do or what cars we drive. But there's the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery summed up in one line. Happiness is an inside job. And that inside job arises out of the very awareness that God created as your very self. We've talked about this before. Your I am is present right here, robustly present. Nobody would say, I'm not. Each of you would say, I am. There's Christ, the self that God made present within you now. We just get identified with everything we put after I am, so that we don't rest in that pure awareness. But that pure awareness is what gives us pure intelligence within that awareness, is what gives us the ability, the capacity to choose. The capacity given by God to ourselves to create our experience. That's within each one of us right now. None of you would deny that. Wake to that is what you are, not all the concepts and judgments and self-identifications you've got after I am. It's that close. It's always present. Always present. Love that self beyond all created things. Nurture that self. Cultivate that self only which speaks of joy and capital T truth. So that your words and actions, it's cool to walk in a room and feel the energy change. I had a lot of experience of walking in the room, certainly sometimes with my family, and the energy didn't change for the better. Because I wasn't embodying Christ. I was embodying this idea of myself, and I had a lot of anger and resentment and regression and all kinds of stuff. But he's not talking about doing anything here, just by merely of your presence. And the I am of you is as pure and present right now as it will ever be. That I am has never sinned. That I am awareness has never done anything. All the forgiveness work we do is for the ego, our self-identification that's after the I am. One of the greatest things you can arrive at is the recognition of the futility of forgiveness. When you recognize the self that God made, the Christ I am, forgiveness makes no sense to that Christ. Christ was created, forgiveness was created as a tool that would help us wake up from our ego without creating more guilt. And many of us have used forgiveness to very enlightening proportions, haven't we? We've certainly lightened our load. But you're really going to lighten your load when you're able to put forgiveness down. Because forgiveness is not a function of Christ, it's a function of the ego. Because Christ has never judged. Christ has never been in conflict. Christ just is. So be willing when the time comes to set forgiveness down. I'm not saying forgiveness is bad. It's a great tool. If you need to wake the ego up, forgiveness is a powerful tool. But the ego can even co-opt forgiveness and become a master forgiver, which is still starting with, oops, there's something to be forgiven. So just be willing to set forgiveness down when the time comes. And then you won't even lift a finger, and you'll experience more that I need do nothing. And as if there's an energy within you striving to get from any perceived thing or object. Rosie Marie and I were just in England a few weeks ago, and Jeshua said in a channeling, if you're cold in bed, buy a blanket rather than have another human being come to provide that service for you of warmth or companionship or something else. About the viciousness of that attack. But if you just look, and this will go back to our thing we talked about a little minute ago about need. Look at your energy around striving to get from a perceived thing or an object. There's a lot of that. Most of us that entered relationship, I was thinking Cindy was going to fulfill me. She failed so miserably because she couldn't fulfill me, because I couldn't be fulfilled by anything outside of me. So thank you for failing to do what I hoped you would do. And then I turned within and actually found what Jeshua has been telling us all along is there. So this will tie back into that thing about need. And you are sure that you lack inside yourself. And that need and that lack always has to come with your self-identification. It is not present in pure I am awareness, which is what you are, which is always present.
So then what happens? You finally get it right and you decide, okay, What's that little shadow been doing, little blade of grass? Well, let's take care of that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. How many blades of grass and how many shadows are there in this beingness that seems to be overlaid over the self? Does it matter? You're busy birthing Christ. What happens when that really occurs? First, and listen well, nothing will be unacceptable to you. Well, but does that mean if somebody's not a vegetarian, they're still loved? Does that mean if somebody votes for, what is this one, the man named after the bird, quail? If someone were to vote for quail, does that mean that they're not insane, that I can love them? Does that mean that if someone who seeks power and therefore creates a war and kills 5,000 women and children, that I can still look upon them and not have my love be disturbed? Does that mean that whatever arises within this temporary world is really, truly, literally not a problem for me any longer? That nothing is unacceptable? Yes. It doesn't mean that you condone it. It means it's no longer unacceptable. For what you cannot accept, you will judge. And every judgment is the attempt to murder what you have decided has no right to be.
I love when he talks dialogue, because he speaks exactly what we're thinking in our minds, because of course he can hear what we're thinking in our minds. So this thing about okay, we talked about the shadow, and what he's getting at here, how many of you have said, well, this part of me wants to do this, and this part of me sees it this way, and this part of me thinks I should do this? Well, shit, that's the problem. You're only one self, but we've made multiple selves. It's not like we just created an ego. We created an ego and then shattered it into all kinds of different pieces and parts. Sometimes we call those roles, like jobs and parents, or sometimes we call it interests, hobbies that we associate with. But the point is, there's only one self of you. And that one self is the same self of Christ that we share with all, including Jeshua. So he's saying, does it matter? Because if you recognize that, and some of you have, and have felt absolutely overwhelmed and bewildered at the prospect of cleaning up the shit house that the ego has made in your consciousness. You feel absolutely overwhelmed. It's like you make one direction, and then here comes another part of yourself, really old part, or maybe even a new part, and you get really confused. Does it matter? You can play that game of reforming and self-improvement, the ego, till the cows come home, or you can drop it like a hot potato and simply abide in birthing Christ. When you finally stop playing the game is when awakening begins to hasten its way to you. By stopping all the effort at fixing an ego that really doesn't exist. But all the effort that goes into it doesn't arise out of your Christness. It arises out of the ego itself as a self-preservation maneuver, a self-improvement maneuver. And I mean little s, self there. So what happens when this occurs? And he says, listen well. I mean, when he's stopping and saying, listen well, or he repeats himself, he's very, very deeply trying to get your attention. And then he says, nothing will be unacceptable to you. Nothing will be unacceptable to you. Now, I can feel a lot of minds out there stop and shudder, and then the but. And remember, it's only that but is part of the ego's consciousness. It's not really part of spirit, where the ego says but, spirit says and. Nothing will be unacceptable to you. I bet most of us have a longer list of what's unacceptable to us than what's acceptable. It's a very robust database. If you look in your consciousness, it is very, very deep. And if you really observe, you'll find that the ego runs around throughout the day cultivating the maintenance of that unacceptable database by what it's experiencing in the world. And we think that we're doing something noble or moral or righteous even. We're denying the self that God gave us is what we're doing with all that. Nothing will be unacceptable to you. Your partner leaving, your dog getting run over, World War III, an asteroid, whatever. Or maybe even the second coming of Christ. Nothing will be unacceptable to you. Because you'll realize that the I am of you has always been, regardless of what egoic games you were playing. And you'll recognize it always will be, regardless of whatever games you play in this dimension or in any other dimension. And I love that he does this next one. Well, but does that mean if someone's not a vegetarian? Boy, that seems to be a big one on the spiritual path. This whole idea of vegetarianism, and that's spiritual and the other's not. When I asked Jeshua that question, he told me this joke. He said, 2 guys walk into a bar. One guy sits down and orders a steak. He's dressed in biker's leathers, big old burly beard, and he's smoking a cigar. Other guy is in a saffron robe and he's eating a vegan salad. These 2 enlightened beings look at each other, and Yeshua said, what do they say to each other? I said, I don't know, Yeshua, what do they say? He says, nothing. 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 Well, I'm going to tie nothing, no thing back to no thing will be unacceptable to you. So enlightenment has absolutely zero to do with your diet. That has to do with your ego's bullshit concepts about holiness or about rightness or about wrongness, or that a cow is more conscious than a head of lettuce. It's all light. It's all the same thing. But really look deeply into all the things that you find unacceptable. It's a great joke, wasn't it? Huh? Well, if you get that joke and you live that joke, then the joke won't be on you anymore, and you'll probably be awake to it. So the point is, and let me just get it out there, if you believe that eating meat is bad, well then you better eat food. You better eat vegetables or whatever. The point is, you're going to transcend all those beliefs of right and wrong, good and bad, what's spiritual and what's not. And we may have to take a break here for... Great. Okay, we'll keep going. And, this dates the pathway, because he channeled this when Quayle and Bush were running the first time. But I just want to point out how incredibly universal this truth has been to each and every one of us. It's as true now as it was when he walked the planet, and it'll be as true 2,000 years from now. So don't think because this isn't the newest thing, it's not new age enough. This is ageless, timeless. So, and then he goes on, not just if he hasn't stuck our eye, so now he's gotten us on food. Then he sticks his eye in our politics, because that's one we really find unacceptable, deeply unacceptable. I don't know, I don't look at news very much, but I looked today and there was something about the government going to shut down. I was like, yes! Who needs government? But the point is, so then he sticks his finger in the ego's political eye, and then he's going to do it in the next one about murder. What if someone seeks power and therefore creates war and kills 5,000 women and children? He's pointing out here our ideas that women and children are somehow inherently more innocent than men. Now, admittedly, we might have behaved that way, but that doesn't make it true. But what about the one who creates a war that kills tens of millions? It's happened on this world. What if that was no longer unacceptable to you? boy, your worldly mind will rise up. I mean, have a mind seizure about that. But that you could still not look upon them and have my love disturbed. If you look, the I am of you is never disturbed. Awareness is always present. It's your crazy thoughts and feelings and emotions that seem to be disturbed. The Christ is always present. His example of that was on the cross. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. And then he goes on, whatever arises in this temporary world is really, truly, literally not a problem for me any longer. If happiness is an inside job, this has got to go with it. Because if you still have a long list of things that are unacceptable, you're saying, those things are more important to me than my happiness. I choose to allow these things to disturb my peace instead of being 100% I am at peace as the I am that I am, regardless of what happens. So you can't have a laundry list of unacceptable and fulfill peace and happiness being an inside job. They don't go together. Which one do you choose? It's really that simple. Do you want this long laundry list of things that you run around the world looking to set you off? Or looking over your shoulder hoping you won't see it so that it won't hurt your feelings? Or would you like to walk around in peace because you've let all that go? This is a disturbing thing in the Course in Miracles when he says, seek not to change the world, but to change your mind about the world. And boy, we get a lot of energy behind saving the world. Well, the world's going to be saved, one crazy insanity being healed at a time. Not because of anything that seems to happen out in the world. What happens out there will change as a reflection of more and more and more of us awakening. So you want to heal the world? Perfect happiness is an inside job and let nothing be unacceptable to you. That's your greatest contribution to world peace. That's your greatest contribution. And by the way, you get to be the first to experience your perfect peace. You get all the direct benefits. Then they're shared with everyone else. But you can't give that away if you don't accept it, if you don't have it for yourself. And this is really important. It doesn't mean that you condone it. I'm not condoning what Hitler did. But because Hitler did what he did, I'm not letting it take my peace. I can assure you that the love of the Creator is as equal for Jeshua as it is for Hitler. And our body minds don't want to believe that because we want a God that will pick and choose. We want a God that will love me but not love someone else. Well, if that's the God you really think exists, you're deeply asleep. Wake up out of that. So when I truly was willing to let this into my consciousness, what I saw, what I experienced, is that we are all God. That we're playing at this. What would it be like? And we're experimenting with idea after idea after idea after idea with zero consequence. With zero loss of love from God. With zero loss of self. That's the cosmic joke, is we're doing all this to ourselves. Every judgment that you make is an attempt to murder what you have decided has no right to be. So when Jeshua helped me with this and I fully got it, that God is all that is. That means every potential experience. Every one. And God welcomes them all. So if we're saying, my unacceptable list should not exist, you're really saying God, as all that is, isn't good. I know more, and this does not belong in creation. So you're trying to murder your own infinite freedom. The very freedom which we're experimenting with by creating all this seemingly unacceptable stuff. So look at that. Every judgment you make, and we rarely question them. We're so certain that they're valid and legitimate that we rarely question them.
Judgment is the opposite of forgiveness. It lives on the side of the fence with fear. Forgiveness lives on the side of the fence with love, and only love can heal this world. Imagine then living in a state of beingness in which literally nothing was unacceptable to you, because you knew that the source of your true beingness was far beyond the limitations of anything created in space and time, that even death, which has been created out of the contraction known as fear, that not even death is unacceptable. When I spoke many months ago to this, my beloved brother, who allows me to blend with his mind, and said to him, "If you will choose to trust me, I will show you the way to peace," I had to wait for his reply. I could do nothing to take from him the freedom required to become wholly committed to allowing Christ to be birthed where once a useless illusion had reigned. And when I said to him, in your understanding of time, quite some time ago, I will show you how to become the being out of which all creation is arising, so that you will know the truth that sets you free, it raised up within him the most root or fundamental of fears possible. What is that? It is the last to be overcome, the fear of death. For when you are confronted by the truth, you know that everything you have sought to create as a substitute for the truth must die. That is why it is said, "The last to be overcome shall be death," fear of death. Death is allowed that Christ might live.
So we'll start at the bottom. Death is allowed that Christ might live. Again, death is not something that the ego does for itself. I've heard many people really self-attacking. I just want a lobotomy. I just want the ego gone. I mean, rather than simply allowing God to bring you home in the perfect way so that Christ might live within you and you be consciously aware of it. Because Christ dwells within you now, we're just seldomly consciously aware of it. I mean, any of us that have woken up, nobody says it's like some new thing. We all go, damn, it was there the whole time. It was within. What Jeshua said, what Buddha said, it was there. I just finally had to get still enough to look. So judgment is the opposite of forgiveness. And we judge in ways we're not even recognizing that we're judging. I mean, it takes a lot of vigilance to be conscious of when you're judging. But take a look at it. Because you couldn't pick, you couldn't choose between one and the other if you didn't already have a pre-existing database of judgment. He gets to this in the Course in Miracles by saying, I will make no decisions by myself. Because decisions always weigh as an effect of the judgments that you have made. If you didn't judge first, you don't arrive at decisions or conclusions. And he's saying, make no decisions by yourself. Let the Spirit inform you and help you make those choices and decisions. Only love will heal this world. Allowing, accepting, trusting, and embracing. I don't know many worldly movements that are about allow it, accept it, trust it, and embrace it. Most of it's all about resistance to what is. What if the condition of the world is the way God is bringing humanity home? What if we were to trust that and stop pushing against it? It's like all these anti-campaigns, like anti-war and anti-drug. When you put negative against negative, all you do is create more, rather than allowing and trusting. But you're only asked to do that for yourself. It's a very powerful practice if you're willing to do it. You'll come to experience that the source of your true beingness, that which gives birth to Christ, and not that it gave birth a long time ago, but that it's birthing Christ within you now, always fresh, always new, now. That you'll come to recognize, you'll experience that, oh my God, I am eternal. I don't have to worry about this body. I don't have to run around to try and make survival work. I don't have to effort. I don't have to be in fear. I mean, right now, each of you, with a sufficient revelation, fear would be absolutely gone. Well, our willingness is to recognize where we have fear and be willing to release it. Not by pushing against it, but by allowing it and saying, oh wow, look here, I've chosen fear. Jeshua, please show me how to choose allowance where I have before chosen resistance that caused me to go into fear. It's God's pleasure to give you the kingdom, and it's been given to you always. You're using the presence of I Am to create your story. Without the presence of God, you couldn't even be creating illusions. So God's not mad or pissed off. God's been fueling it the whole time by the presence of love. And I love that when he spoke with JM, if you will choose to trust me, I will show you the way to peace. And then Jeshua said he had to wait on JM's reply. How many of us have just wanted Spirit to do it? But Spirit can't do it. You're the Christ. You're sovereign. There is no power over you. I mean, I used to get mad at Jeshua because I wanted him to just do it because he was the Son of God. He said, dude, I got no power, no more power than you do. I can't override your choice. I can stand beside you while you make all your stupid choices, or you make all your insane choices and whisper in your ear, choose again, choose again, choose again, choose again. I can open up your mind if you're willing and let you see what your choices have been. But we have to make that choice. I will show you how to become the being out of which all of all of creation is arising. That is a powerful thing when you experience it. When you truly know there's nothing outside of what you are. That has to completely decimate the self-concept you have that says you're this. So that you'll know the truth that sets you free. And by the way, when you are free, you'll know that everyone else is free already. That they're playing within their freedom the game of separation. Which of course you're free to do. Love hasn't showed up and taken anyone's choice privilege away, have they? Love would never do that. Because we are the expression of God's choice to extend itself. So it's really, what's the power of the choice that you're using? The last to be overcome shall be death. And it's not a physical death. It's an emotional, psychological, self-identified death. It's everything that comes after your sense of being wiped away and rendered completely irrelevant. Now, you may experience that with the concept of bodily death, but you don't have to do it that way. And many who experience bodily death still don't have that realization even in death. So they get back in the queue to come back and get to try again. So if you're in this room or if you're watching this, hallelujah that you're coming to a conscious awareness and a recognition. I can feel out there a lot of, self-judgment about what's been said here tonight. But you're being extended the whole damn thing right here. I mean, this is worth celebrating, getting really excited about. That I'm being shown the way out while conscious, while aware, while being present.
There is no one in this room. Listen carefully. There is no one in this room, and there shall not at any time be anyone who hears these words, to whom I have not spoken that promise unto. I will show you the way to the truth that is true always, and sets you free. But only you can make the decision to bring the whole of your being to that journey. And all it requires is this much willingness, what you call a smidgen in
Cindy,
your
wait.
world.
I'm going to do this one. No one in this room, and for those of you who probably listened to this or read it, you were immediately thinking those in the room when he channeled it. But he says, well, listen carefully. There is no one in this room or shall be no one at any time who hears this message to whom he has not directly spoken that same promise. I will show you the truth that will set you free. So take a look around the room. Everyone in this room has had that conversation with Jesus. You may not be consciously aware of it, but bam, here is part of His promise being revealed to you. When He shared this with me, He said, no one will get the way of mastery unless they have already decided yes. You think that your decision is all those damn thoughts that are running around in your mind. That decision is the Christ within you that is one with Him. So the fact that you're studying this text, experiencing this text, being done by this text, is His promise being made manifest to you right here where you are right now. Why give all those damn doubt thoughts that run around in your mind any more proof, any more reality than this? He spoke the promise to you. You said, thank you, I will accept. And this being in your possession, in your life, is part of His expression of that answer. You may indeed still be waiting to give it all of your beingness. That maybe is a still choice you have. Will you give it all of your beingness? But it's too late. You've already agreed. He's already put it in your consciousness, so to speak. Thank you, Cindy.
A smidgen of willingness is all it takes. I know the way home because I have completed the journey, and I will show you that way. With every word that I utter, in this form as well as into other forms, my one intent is to reveal the place within you to yourself that is the presence of love that you seek. What if you choose to actually commit yourself to considering and hearing what I'm sharing and return to the innocence of a child as you contemplated what it would mean in your life? Rest assured, when the journey to the kingdom is completed, the journey within begins anew. And the bliss and the wisdom and the creativity and the laughter and the friendships, the family, the joy, the serenity, the peace that has been, for the most part, as what could only be seen as surely an impossible dream, these things will become your most ordinary state of being. And yet, none of it can occur through any power that can move through me.
This teaching is really a top-down teaching. He starts with the truth, and he reinforces the truth. He occasionally dips down to kind of poke fun at our dream, but keeps pointing us back to the truth. So awakening will not happen because of any force outside of you. It will arise because the Christ within you says, enough. And I will be only that which I am, the self that God created. A smidgen of willingness. He does say a little bit of willingness in the Course in Miracles. He goes on in this pathway and he's alluding to it, the fullness of your willingness. But I want to point out in this second paragraph, his one intent is to reveal the place within you. So if it's within you, it must be there now. To you, that is the presence of the love that you seek or that you have ever sought. That is his one intention. So all of our prayers for him to fix our spouses and to fix this and to change our bank accounts and to make the world the way we want it to be, those aren't prayers he entertains. We're desperate. We want God and we want Jeshua to endorse our dream and make it the way we want it to be. His one intention is to wake you up out of your dream of separation, wake you up out of your need, wake you up out of your seeking for love. So when just the whole of your beingness, your only prayer is for the truth will come and set you free. But just look at your prayers. What is it that you're asking for if you're even asking out of need? Most of the time we're asking, Father, please validate my dream and my judgments and make my world the way I choose it to be. Rather than surrendering in to show me what is the truth. Even if that renders everything I've ever thought completely irrelevant. Even if that means every relationship I've ever been in changes dramatically. Whew. Because that's when you'll stop seeking love, when you know you and the source of love are one. And then these things that he refers to will be your experience. Because you know what? All you'll do is give that love away. And the more you give, the more you get, the more you get, the more you give. Wow. Need goes completely out the window. And that's just your most ordinary state of being. We've worked our ass off to try and get this and we've never gotten it, have we? I mean, if you had, I don't know, well, there's maybe 8 or 9, 10 things he says there. I don't know, if I could manage to juggle 3 of those at one time, I thought I was the man and I had arrived. But you know, like juggling, it's bound to fall. One's going to drop. And then before you know it, none of them are going. And none of this can happen as a power that can move through him. If he could do it for us, he already would have done it. He did it to show us that we can do it. And he will walk with you choice by choice, decision by decision, to show you the way. But it's all an inside job, and it hinges on the power of your choice to recognize that you are sovereign and your happiness depends on nothing.
I can guide you, and I can show you the way, and I can walk beside you on the way that you've chosen. And at times, I can give you my strength until yours is as certain as mine by carrying you. But ultimately, you must demand that I put you down so that your feet touch the soil of the kingdom of heaven, and you walk under your strength, under your certainty beside me. And you will indeed find in that day and hour that I will as often ask you, how do you think we could do this? What would you like to create with me? As you ask it of me. And then indeed we are as brother and brother, sister and brother, friends, dancing and playing in the kingdom prepared for us of our Father. One little shadow, cast by a tiny blade of grass, is all that seems to prevent you from coming wholly to where I am. And if you tarry yet a little longer, it's okay. You see, you cannot prevent me from knowing the truth about you and loving you. And when you are in love, when you are so immersed in simply loving, isn't it true that you have no sense of time at all? There's no sense of effect disturbing your peace. You're just what you call swaying to the music. You are loving, and your wholeness grows even more holy.
Until we demand that he put us down and we walk beside him effectively as an equal. He's talked about that in almost every lesson, that we are his perfect equal. Look within your consciousness. You don't believe it. Are you willing to? Because he said it to me. Brother, I've come as far as I can go with you. We'll stand here. I'll stand beside you as long as you want. But until you're willing to walk beside me as the Christ that I am, that you are, we really can't go any further. Brought up fear in me. But I decided to say, fine, brother, put me down. then what is it that we will create together? And this is that expression. One who wakes and all this great fun stuff that we do is the expression of my co-creation with Him. To do nothing but do what He did for me and remind you of who you are in truth, and that it's true now, and nothing you've ever done has ever affected that. And you can lay your cross down, lay all that stuff down, and wake up and come play with us. That's really all He's looking for. And He goes back to this tiny little shadow of the blade of grass. You're going to wake up when you recognize you're the damn light that seems to be casting the tiny shadow. You're not the shadow, you're the source. You and the source are one, and you're illuminating the whole thing. Your presence is what even makes the dream, the shadow, possible. But He talks about in the Course in Miracles about righting your world. You move from shadow to light. You move from effect to cause. You move from fear to love. And you can do it consciously. That's what helped get me to the point where I could awaken, was I made that movement consciously. Oh, I could only be thinking this if I was the shadow. What if I was the sun? What if I was the source of light? Would that have any difference to me? Would the sun find what we're doing on the planet unacceptable and decide to extinguish itself because it was pissed off? No, of course not. So when you make that movement consciously in your mind and you recognize, wow, there's suffering as the shadow, there's peace as the light, you start to do that enough and you experience it, all of a sudden the choice between love and fear becomes really easy. And the more you make it, you kind of get a new habit of making it. And then love comes to show up to reinforce, because you're now acknowledging what the truth is. So Yeshua's whole thing about the second coming wasn't that He's coming back, but that the rest of us will step into the kingdom as equals. And love will flow through us as it flowed through Him. That's exciting stuff. And we've all experienced this, having no time. Everybody has. It's called the zone, being in the zone, or being in the flow, or whatever you want to call it. Some of us have it cooking. Some of us have it making love. Some of us have it playing sports. Some of us have it all the time. Why not live that way? It's up to you.
Therefore, indeed, love one another as I have loved you. For the Father has first loved me, that I might show you the truth of what love is and the reality of your beingness. And I will not cease in doing this, regardless of how long you choose to tarry. For love is indeed patient and kind. Love is not deluded, and love does not allow delusion. Love embraces all things, trusts all things, allows all things, and knows perfectly well where it's going, and never ceases in that journey until every blade of grass is released from casting shadows, and the whole of creation is returned to the heart of God.
Love one another as He has loved us. That's a big question. There's a whole lot of Christian theology about that, about what Jesus' love was. Well, then He goes on to tell us what it is. It's not diluted. It does not allow dilution. It embraces, trusts, allows, and knows perfectly what's going on. That's how He's always loved us. Allow, accept, trust, embrace. That's all we're asked to do. That doesn't say buy roses for everybody. That doesn't say change the world. That says acknowledge the sleeping Christ playing games and walk with them until they choose to awaken. Be at peace. Be the example of peace. So I'm sorry that Yeshua's love wasn't a Hallmark card kind of emotional love. That's a hangover we have from the love that we created as humans, this emotional thing. Allowance, embracing, and trust, that's a love that just is. It can be experienced sometimes emotionally, but we want something that just makes us feel loved out of our unworthiness. Well, that's really asking love to acknowledge our unworthiness and then convince us that we're not that, rather than simply accepting that it is. And that's all you'll do when you wake up, when you recognize, oh my gosh, it's true for everyone. You won't get on a street corner and go out and start megaphoning, wake up from your stupid dreams. You just wait. Those who are ready, they'll find you. They may find you in a grocery store. They may find you in a living room. They'll find you. And you may never say a word to them. But on the level of soul, you'll wink at them and say, you can choose just like I did. You can be at peace right here in this world. You don't have to leave. You don't have to go anywhere else. You can be at peace right here.
Learn to love yourself and cry out to this world, I and my Father are one. That is the soil from which I move and live and have my beingness. So be it. And always remember that the Father looked upon his only creation and said, behold, it is very good. And that goodness has a name, and it's your name, and 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 my name. And behold, it is very good. That light deserves to shine. And so, with that, the message of this hour is given. I believe you can discern what it is. And yet before you stands the doorway. Will you open it through the power of your choice? For what you experience will reveal to you what choice you have made this day. And with that, beloved and holy friends, may peace be with you always. And may the truth that is true always shine within your hearts and minds throughout all ages. And remember, there's a perfectly good reason why I keep saying time and again, I am with you always. Peace then be unto you always. Amen.
Christianity paints this Jeshua, I am with you always. It's like it's special, like he's special, like it's some really magnanimous thing. He doesn't have a damn choice. We don't have a choice to not be the I am that we are. He is always with us because the I am that you are, your very sense of presence, is the same presence that He is. We share that equally as one. And I know that sounds weird, sharing it as one. But He's always with us, and you're always with Him. You may not be conscious of it. That's the only difference. So if you've made magnanimous of Him that He's special for this kind of love that is always with you, forgive that, take that down off, and recognize it's the same I am. If you say, I am Stephen, and he says, I am Jesus, you drop the two names, there's one thing there. And that's true of each and every one of us. Each and every one of us. And if you'll rest into the I am will reveal itself to you, and I can assure you it will be greater than anything you would have ever put after the blank I am. And you can just let that go and wake up into this. I and my Father are one. And He's asking you to cry out to the world. In one of the lessons He asked us to announce to the universe, I am the one the world can see. And that's not a conceited, like, I'm the one and none of you else are. It's referring to that one that we share, the I am. I mean, if you're saying that and you really think you're the only one and everyone out there is an illusion, you got some real forgiveness opportunities. And always remember that the Father looked upon His creation and said, behold, it is very good. God created us to create. We've done it. We created the seemingly impossible. We created the whole dream of separation. We managed to get death to seem real. I would say we did a very, very good job of it. Behold, God doesn't judge us for that. Just ask that if when we're finished playing, we wake up and come back home. That's all the prodigal son story was about. When the son left to go play and create his own kingdom, God didn't sit in heaven going, oh shit, this is really bad. What if my son never comes back? God allowed, trusted, and continually embraced. But when the son made the turn, when the son said, yes, Jeshua, I will take your offer of showing me the truth that sets me free, then the father rushes to greet him. Well, I don't know, it rushed to greet me through, we were talking about it today, conversations with God, then A Course in Miracles, then the Way of Mastery. I mean, I was getting showered with it. The father rushing to say, great, here's what you need. Here are the stepping stones I am laying before you to come back home consciously. Behold, it is very good. Are you willing to look upon the whole of your creation as it is and say, behold, I have created and it is very good? Why not? And say, big deal. What would I choose now in this moment? Give up spending time in the past, undoing the past. That's another trick that you can stay lost in the past, and it's just a trick of the ego to get you out of the present so you won't actually choose peace now. You keep trying to forgive the past. Whew. May peace be with you always. It is always with us. What he should probably say there is, may peace be conscious to you always. But the choice for peace is always present. We may not make it, but it's always a possible option, is it not? So it's always there. If we're not choosing it, shame on us. It's got nothing to do with Jeshua or God or anything else. It's our deal. I love this lesson. I love it. At the end of this lesson, Jeshua answered 5 questions, which is probably more than he did in any other lesson. But one of them, he answered a question about being a servant to God. And many people say, what is God's will for me? What is God's will for me? If I only knew God's will for me. This question is going to address that. So you guys have a little, I know we've gone kind of long, it's okay. Can I feel the internet out there? Yes, I got a yes there too. Okay, here we go.
If God only wants me to be happy and doesn't require any specific action of me, what does it mean to be the servant of God? Is there a divine plan for action God would have us follow, or are the actions given us based wholly upon our momentary self-perceptions? Do we have to do things here in a particular way?
First, beloved friend, that is not one question, that is a host of questions. I have said unto you many times that the Father asks only that you be happy. And if indeed you are not asked to do anything, what then could it possibly mean to be a servant of God? When you serve another, you act, you are in such a way that they receive the joy of knowing that your full attention has been with them. To be a servant of the Father, then, means that you have finally chosen to set aside anything else that would distract your attention, and to place the fullness of your attention, which is the fullness of your being, on the reality of the love the Father would extend unto you. You serve God by receiving unceasingly what God would offer to you. Imagine going to work for someone who makes chocolate ice cream. And you say unto your employer, "What would you have me do?" And the employer smiles and says, "I love this ice cream that I make so much that all you need to do is eat it. And I will pay you very well if you would just fulfill that function." And you look at this one and you go, "Well, I happen to like chocolate ice cream too, and if that's all I need to do, you may rest assured you're going to have the most loyal employee you could ever possibly imagine." To serve God is not to work in the world in order to fulfill some conception that the mind has conjured up about what it means to serve God. It means only to drink so deeply that your cup is always overflowing. There is no sense of lack, and therefore no need to reach outside oneself to have the cup filled. And when your attention is so devoted to the reality of the love that dwells within you, your cup does begin to overflow. And as it overflows, it will seek its own way. That is, like a river that has overflowed its banks, will begin to cut new grooves, will it not? And you can never tell. You can never bet on which direction the new streams are going to go in. But it will bring the sustenance of life and of love to all that it touches. But those new streams will cease flowing if the main river ever forgets its source. Therefore, you need do nothing but receive the reality of God's love for you. And again, as you do that, it may seem in the course of your life that you are asked to embrace some phenomena that's passing by, whether it be healing the shadow of one little blade of grass within what you think is your conscious mind, as opposed to everybody else's conscious mind, to doing something that seems to be involved with relationship in the world, whether it be feeding a hungry child, bringing the nurturance to another through touch or through song, planting a seed in the ground, delivering a piece of mail. It doesn't really matter. As I've said many times, when you truly understand that you need do nothing but receive the love of God unceasingly, you will have become that perfect servant. And then if it arises that you're going to be a street sweeper, you will simply sweep the street. And you will not have anything else in mind save that your cup is overflowing. And others will pass you by and they'll say, "This person's just a simple street sweeper, but I find myself wanting to walk this way to work just to say hello. Seems to make my day." And perhaps you'll be asked to be the savior of the world. Only the voice for ego would see a difference between being the savior of the world and a street sweeper. Therefore, strive not to know what you should do in the forms of this world, but be you wholly dedicated to being in loving devotion in order to receive all that God would shower upon you. Love so grand that the mind cannot even conceive of being without love. and indeed your cup will overflow. Herein is the essence of the many questions disguised as the one.
Woohoo, there we go. So God's will for you is perfect happiness. Nothing that you can think in our mind about what God's will would be for you or what you might, quote, do. You can't even conceive it, because that would only be conceived from a past fear-based mind. He's only asking, and he used a beautiful symbol of ice cream, because I know a lot of ice cream fans in there. It had to be chocolate because JM is a big chocolate fan. That you're just asked to drink of God's will for you. Drink of God's love, which is the I am that you are, and the power of choice to create experience. To drink so deeply of that, and then love will cut its new groove. And he made the point between the street sweeper and the Savior of the world. Of course, the ego wants to be the Savior of the world. But you'll be so stinking happy, it doesn't matter. That's the point. Because you'll be so intoxicated in receiving God's love that it won't matter what you're doing. And this is a joy for me to do, just like going to the grocery store or taking a dump. Or Cindy and I did a ton of house cleaning today. And I even said to her, you know how joyful it is to do this without a complaining mind? So don't worry about it. That's just the ego wanting to know, well, what's my enlightened life going to look like? Well, who gives a shit? You'll just be so happy being whatever it is. So just be willing to let go into the I don't know, but I use the power of my choice now for peace. I choose the power to accept the I am that I am and simply be that and see what happens. Try it. I promise you're going to like it. He's just asking, eat all the ice cream you could want to eat. And you know, your cup will runneth over. And it'll be like that. You'll invite all your friends over. My boss makes all the ice cream, and he makes so much, I can't eat it all. Will you come help me eat my ice cream? So that you'll just be extending love all the time. And it may be in an overt way like this is, or it may be in a very quiet, sweeping the street way that no one would ever, quote, know. And the Father will look upon both and say, behold, it is very, very good. Because the ego, in that desire to be the Savior of the world rather than the street sweeper, still thinks that it's going to earn God's love by doing really Savior of the world kind of stuff. No. God loves all equally and shines as radiantly upon the street sweeper as upon the Savior of the world. Cool stuff. Next week, we're not going to continue listening to the channeling. We're going to just listen to it. I should have taken continue out. Lesson 8, dropping pebbles into the pool of awareness. We've used that analogy a lot, these pebbles. Any questions or comments tonight? Gordon's back, really excited with that microphone, so I guess not. Okay, well then I'll do announcements real quick. I have started doing something called channeled listening. A couple of you here have experienced it already. You need to hear internal guidance. That's what takes us home. That's the purpose of the Course in Miracles and the Way of Mastery, is to connect us to our inner knowing, and that will take us home. We can't ever find truth in a text, period. He's done a channeling that I've heard where he says you can burn the Course in Miracles, you could burn all the tapes of the Way of Mastery, and in the ashes would be a jewel. And it's that jewel that you need find, and that's within. So I'm doing this thing called channel listening, where I'm prompted with a question. I ask the question, but then you, by the opening of this vortex, hear your own inner guidance, your own inner knowing within. And it can be very powerful because it completely wipes out, oh, I don't ever hear guidance, and that kind of thing. So if you're interested, you can call me or Skype with me. If anyone's interested in being on the One Who Wakes mailing list, you can go to onewhowakes.org, or there's a sign-up sheet on the other side of the fireplace. Oh, love offering. All I do is drink love, and I'm happy for it to flow over and touch and share and wake up and do all that kind of good stuff. So when I chose to go all in and follow love, I gave up working in the world. I gave up going and living for survival. And Jeshua said, those who drink deeply of the Father will always be provided for. So it's your love. You're the angels of support, those of you on the internet and here. So we ask, we need your support. Put guilt-free money in there, please, in the basket, or you can go to onewhowakes.org. In the upper right-hand corner is a give button. And all of this work is done completely. It's all given. The love is given free. How can you charge for love? But we would welcome you supporting us. Whenever I come to do this work, Jeshua and an incredible heavenly host of mighty companions come, and your guides come. They're very eager for you to speak within, to listen, because they're really ready to take, they're waiting by the phone. Oh, there it is. All we're here to do is to love you and remind you that your creations are very, very good already. It's okay. We all dreamt the same insane dream you did. It's no big deal. We love you with an absolutely infinite love and a perfect peace and an infinite patience. Join us if you wish. Peace and a beautiful good night.